What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined by one of my good friends, comic creator Brent Fisher. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello. If you aren't familiar, Brent, they are the creators of The Color of Always. It is a LGBTQ plus anthology comic that is on Kickstarter, and it is taken over right now. It's got the Kickstarter stamp of approval, a project that we love. Man, I'm excited to talk about your project.
Oh yeah, and I'm excited to go into it. And not only are you a good friend, people should know that we are also LCS buddies.
Yes,
Well, we go to pick up our polls typically at the same time if circumstances allow.
that is true. This is like one of my first times, like someone that I literally meet all the time in person, and we probably could have done this interview in person, but I felt like it was easier to do it like this.
Well, with Christmas coming up and everything, yeah. But we'll do an in-person one. Let's make it fun. We'll do something thematic in your signature style.
And we'll go to our LCS, and because we frequent the same LCS, and we'll have our owner open up their media room for us, and we'll do something sweet there for some point. But we're not talking about me, we're talking about you, and we're talking about what you have created. So I know you have done a lot of you had a lot of short stories and projects and anthologies, but correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first one that is your baby that you have kind of cultivated the whole project, right?
Yeah, it was my vision. I brought it to bear. I hired a lot of the initial artists for the logo, for the pre-launch page. The cover artist is an Italian artist named Elisa Romboli. She's known right now mostly for, I think, a thing called Truth for Image Comics. And I hired just, the initial get the ground foundation. And I also did a Google form, put out the pitch, made the announcement. And once it started coalescing and becoming a thing, I brought on an editorial board of friends and cohorts. Fellhound is the artist for Commander Rao for Scout Comics is on there. Justin Richards, author of Finger Guns for Vault, is on there. Myself and my kind of co-creator at this point, Michelle. She's instrumental in getting this taken care of, and I know you probably see her name on the cover. I've actually found out I've been mispronouncing it. It's like Terminator. It's easier to put out that way. It's like Abonator, so Michelle Abonator. And she was rapidly like my budget maestra and project manager. But I think after a certain point, I decided to call her co-creator. Now, she couldn't be here tonight, but I wanted to give credit where credit's due on that too.
Absolutely. So you're basically, someone is keeping you in line with budget, because I've seen your pull list at my LCS and I know how that goes.
Yeah, she keeps me on the narrow with trying to be on target with budget. I have a tendency of saying, hey, everybody can come on board. We're 2 teams over what we originally wanted to do size wise, but I just wanted to keep that tent as wide as possible. And we also had a few artists come on board that wanted to volunteer for prints for reward tiers for Color of Always on Kickstarter. And I guess I could just go right into it, but essentially Color of Always is a love anthology. I wanted to create a comic anthology first and foremost to give back to the comic community, which kind of adopted me once I started writing in earnest. And secondly, I wanted to do it towards a cause that I believe in, which is LGBT representation across the wide spectrum of intersectionality in terms of gender, in terms of sexuality, race. I wanted to have as much representation as possible. And this is my kind of thank you to the comic community as well as Common Cause and getting these voices out there and elevated, raising other artists and writers alongside me as well in the process.
Yeah. And I think what you do with this anthology is such a cool thing. As you mentioned, representation. And, I had David Boer on my show, a couple months back, and talking with them about just like the idea of how important it is to have representation in comics, for everyone to be able to say, like, if I had that comic as a kid, like that I could resonate with, and even more so, like, I just think what you're bringing to the table is something really cool and authentic. And I think is something that the community loves and embraces and needs to have. So
it's positive energy, and we all need a little bit of that right now. And David actually has given us a lot of support and a few good boosts. Everyone's kind of rallied to our banner a little bit, and I really want this to be just the beginning. If we go past our goal and smash it, we want to immediately pivot to another project, possibly two, not concurrently,
That's
but
awesome.
we want to do more, because clearly there's a fire there, and there's just not enough of it.
Yeah.
And so, but in terms of this one specific anthology, this is my dipping my toe into the water. Like I said, it's a love anthology, but that says a lot without saying a lot. It's
Right.
different permutations of love, having growing up with two parents perhaps, or coming out to your family or your loved ones and being accepted or not, and having found family, learning how to love yourself, your identity of journey, and accepting who you are, and if even if others won't, and that kind of thing. And it runs the gambit in terms of all of those kind of permutations of love. And I really wanted it to be representative of different experiences, not only for preservation, but also as education.
Yeah. And I think that's important to aspect. Like you said, there are different representations of love, and what, like you said, of, finding your, maybe it's your family that you're born with, maybe it's your family that you have discovered later on in life, who become your family that you choose. And I just think it's so cool to see that happening in a comic. And I want to dig into this topic a little bit more here. But before we get too deep into your Kickstarter and the campaign, I've got
Mhm.
to ask, because I know you and I know you well, so I know your love for comics, but I want my viewers to know, obviously they can tell from some of your pictures that they can see
Yeah.
right in the background there. How did you get into loving comics though? Because you have a deep passion for comics that I appreciate deeply.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the Carol Danvers to your Bruce Wayne in a way. I, I mean, we've always bonded over that, but really, it came at me. I mean, I don't know about some people's experience, but mine came in phases.
Okay.
I hate to say it, but I left it for a while because I started adulting, and I just tried to survive for a little bit, and I kind of forgot myself.
Mhm.
When I was younger, my mom had a lot of Classics Illustrated,
Okay.
and I don't know if you guys remember that they have no value whatsoever, but they were kind of ubiquitous around the 60s, late 60s, early
It sounds
60s.
about right. Yeah.
Ivanhoe and Robin Hood and other kinds of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. They were all adapted to comics, and my mom had and kept them all because she was kind of a huge tomboy growing up. Baseball cards, comic books. She had a whole bunch of those. I think a few Ms. Marvels, a few later, and a few early Copper Age kind of stuff. And I read it all voraciously. And then I got into my own. She got me a pull at a comic book shop, because I think she was trying to give me what she wished she could have had more of. But
Mm.
I think there was barriers there, in terms of being a girl and whatnot. It must have been, she was in her teen years, probably would have been the early 60s. And I kind of love. Infinity Gauntlet had that, greatest Batman stories ever told, right over there. They bought that for me. I mean, I was a DC kid growing up. I have all the 1990s Elseworld annuals and all the what do you call it, Zero Hour,
Yep. Yep.
Death of Superman, Rebirth, all of that. I mean, I was there for all of it, and then it just went away. And then all of a sudden, Carol Danvers became Captain Marvel, and I remembered reading Ms. Marvel growing up, and I was like, you know what? And then I wish the movie came out. It was coming out, and in earnest. And I started collecting around 2012, but very lightly.
Yeah.
And then when the movie started coming out, people were like crazy for Captain Marvel, but it was this sort of superficial veneer, and which is great, by the way. I
Yeah.
encourage it no matter what. But it was like, oh, a little doodad here, a little trinket there. But I knew the language. I remember collecting, and I'm like, well, you know what? Who's really collecting every key issue of Carol's life? That's where I'm planting my flag, because I identify with the character from when I was younger, and I just like her in general, and she represents a lot for me without getting into it. So
Yeah.
here we are. And then our LCS opened up. Not I was probably open for about a year before I found it, but year two, it was right across the street, and I'm like, let's do this, and from where I work, and then we'll take care of it. And I got a poll, and I started going there every Wednesday. So
Yeah. It's fantastic because I think one of the things that we resonate and connect with is our love for comics, but also we have similar stories from the aspect of we both kind of fell out of comics. We read comics as a kid,
Yeah,
and then life happened. I didn't get into collecting comics again until our LCS opened up. And I remember
yeah,
seeing an ad on Facebook, or an article on Facebook, or one of the papers or whatever around our town. And I was like, oh, there is a comic shop opening up literally 2 minutes from where I work. And I was like,
exactly.
I
Yeah,
need to go check this out. And because I remember not liking comics, like stepping away from comics and then trying to get back into comics. And, there was some gatekeeping with comic shops who were like kind of talking down to me. I was like, this is dumb. I'm done with
Mhm.
comics. And I found our LCS, and our owner, Alan, is fantastic. Uh, and I can't be more grateful for who he is, and, getting me back into my
Yep.
love for comics. But we have that similar path of, we found our love again of
Yeah.
what, drives us. And so I got to ask then, so you got back into comics. What then made you decide, what, I want to take my passion that I grew up with, that I rediscovered, and put it back into creating comics then? Because you've been a part of a handful of anthologies, and now this one.
Well, I was just severed from it completely, right?
Yeah.
My mom's an English professor and my father's an artist. So I had creativity and this love of all kinds of creation growing up. And I've been writing nonstop poetry, short fiction, dabbling, like a Tumblr poet for lack of a better term, and then something else prior to that. And I started befriending all these artists and writers, particularly artists, because I was patronizing their work because they're great, excellent. I was raised by an artist, so I have this affinity for artists and supported them. Liana Kangos will tell you I have this tendency of idolizing them and making everybody feel good. It's because I really admire what they do. It comes from a very special place. But just to dial back to comics in general, it's one of the few times you can kind of connect with your past.
Mhm.
It's like seeing an old friend or taking a memory when you think about something that you missed when you were younger and it's gone forever and you can't go back to it. Well, it's still there. Comics are still there. The price might have changed on the cover, but the nature of it hasn't.
Right.
And it's like being able to have that tether to something special. But in terms of my writing, I realized, wait a minute, I write. I could do this. And then during, at some, I didn't know how to start though. I didn't know how to break into it. Gail Simone had that comic school during the outbreak of COVID right from the beginning, and did like this 5-week, 6-week instructional thing on Twitter that somehow worked for like a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I wrote a script. I learned how scripts work. I actually didn't know where to find one even. I know it sounds dumb in hindsight now, but unless you kind of know what you're looking for, you don't get. And I know there's no formal way to write a script, but it is an eye opener for me once I
Right.
saw a few. And the way I write is kind of like this sort of amalgam of like Matt Fraction slash one or two others in terms of formatting that just clicked with me. And what's the I wrote a script for the thing, and I had one of my friends who's an artist, Fellhound, read it,
Mhm.
and she was like, "Wait a minute, Brent, it was pretty good. I should throw him a bone and I got an in to this anthology called Big Hype, and would you like to be my writer for it? I had to throw some ideas at me." And I gave her like 3 immediately, and she's like, "These are amazing. That one, I guess." And so I cranked it out, and it got put into the anthology. And in fact, one of the first things I ever wrote while on COVID, like in a fever dream, I've had to rewrite it like 3 times, but the bones are there, is going to be eventually published through that new publisher Dauntless
Gosh.
eventually. And I just started throwing scripts out there, and
Yeah.
got into the contest, their contest. And I mean, it's not great. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but I am going to be one's on Kickstarter right now called Producing the End of the World. It's got a few days left and it could use some support. And I got into another one called Off into the Sunset, which is more of a vanity piece among creators, which is Westerns. And that should be hopefully coming out next year. And then
Yeah.
there's something called Femme Fatale. I mean, I could go on. I don't want to talk your ear off, but yeah, I just chucked scripts out there and they worked. And I'm going to keep doing it if I can. But I wanted to do something under my own steam. I wanted to self-publish to get
Yeah.
something out there that I don't want to ask for someone's permission to tell a story. So here we are.
So what what then was the catalyst? I know you said you wanted to kind of go out on your own. How was that process for you to go from being a writer, writing a lot of these short stories, to then saying, okay, I want to be head honcho of bringing all these creators together and making something that I love and appreciate.
Hubris, uh, mostly. I've been working in marketing for 15 years. I know how production works. And Michelle has been in production for a different type of industry for just about as long. And between the two of us, we're not afraid to pick up a phone. It's that thing where you call people, where that's not the, it's actually words are spoken.
Oh,
We're
wait,
not,
you use that to talk to people?
yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
I
it was,
know, right?
that's so
And so,
weird.
and call up like, printers,
Yeah.
emailing printers as well. But like, we work with printers and production teams for our jobs. And so I was able to leverage, my day labor job, for lack of a better word, and do it for this. But really, I just wanted to give back, and I just thought I could. A few people told me, you'd be really good at doing this. You should try this. And I've been through like 2 or 3 anthologies at this point, and not to be unfair to any, because I mean, I learned from these people from
Yeah.
being in them, but I had this sort of voice in my head that said I could probably do this, but even better. And so I wanted to try. I didn't think I couldn't prove I could until I do. So we'll see how it goes.
Right. I mean, that's there's nothing wrong with a little bit of hubris. I mean, to be honest, there's a little bit of that with my YouTube. I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Exactly, right? No, seriously. And I could do it. And you learn from watching, and you say,
Right.
I want to do it, and I want to do it my way, and I want to do it better. And so we'll see if it works. So
Because
yeah,
let's
no,
be honest, who else is like, I want to have a comics with cooking and comics with my wife, like whatever, like, right? Like,
no, it's perfect. Yeah, no, it's exactly the same thing.
it's finding something that you're passionate about and saying, you know what, I'm going to take this and I'm going to run with it. And I think that's what you're doing with this anthology. And you kind of already talked about it a little bit. But let's talk about what are some of the creative
Absolutely.
teams that you brought together, because this is a stacked panel, gang, if you haven't had a
Yeah.
chance to explore the Kickstarter. So why don't you highlight some of those for us?
And by the way, it is weird doing like content creation for something you're passionate about
Yeah,
compared to your day job is your day job. And even if you believe in it, it's still different. Anyway,
right. It is.
let's see here. I have a list here because I want to make sure I don't miss
Go
anybody.
for it. Yeah, by all
Because
means.
it's a stacked deck. I won't go into our teams because there's over 30 plus people. It's 13 teams, and it's all over the map in terms of experience. I wanted fresh voices. I wanted new voices. I have a few established creators involved as well, but I think I'm going to emphasize our reward tiers because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
where the
yeah.
money. Okay, so we have like these giant jumbo-sized bookmarks by Sarah Allen Reed, really talented artist, kind of an underground type, extraordinarily. I mean, she took me under her wing, like, and it kind of gave me some advice, and she didn't even blink when I told her what I wanted to do and what I wanted to accomplish, and it's been great. It's going to be 3 jumbo-sized tarot themed bookmarks,
Okay.
and Michi, aka Requiem Plui, aka Baba Yaga Michi, artist out of New York. Is going to be doing this really beautiful journal with blank pages. So you can use it as a journal or as a sketchbook as one of the reward tiers. Brett Schmidt, another amazing artist, did a whole battery of stickers for us based on LGBT themes and color, but with like a little bit of a tie in the comics. We have a series of prints, 5 prints by Philip Sevy, Skylar Patridge, Fellhound, and Val Halverson, and Adam Ferris. And Philip, is established creator. Skylar as well. Skylar, I was talking to you about Skylar. She just did Resident with Vault, and I
Yep.
think right now she's doing the backstory in the current run right now of Wonder Woman. The Amazon, like the Amazon stories in the
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's her. And Fellhound, of course, again. And Valhall did the art for Finger Guns
Right.
for Vault. And
Right.
Adam Ferris is known as, man, what has Adam not done? Adam's done a whole bunch of anthologies, mostly revolving around social justice. This Nightmare kills fascists, Cosmic Love, Baroque pop, and but the Good Fight, taking a stand against racism and bigotry, which has raised thousands for charities that fight for social justice. And all of the commissions are taken up. Oh, and I also have one more, Linnea, aka Paper Cat, a really popular illustrator online on Twitter and also Instagram and I think DeviantArt. Linnea is pretty famous for doing a lot of shipping art, like for Supercorp and Clexa and
Okay.
basically carried those two fandoms on her back for like the last half decade. And so this is a tsunami of talent involved in the project.
Yeah, and if you look at the Kickstarter, and that's if you saw me glancing off screen, that was me scrolling through. I mean, the sketchbook is beautiful. Those prints that you name dropped right there of all the people who did those, gang.
Yeah,
They're like,
yeah, and they're fun too. They're fun. I wanted to be romance themed, so they're a little um that old Marvel series, romance, love and romance, like the
yeah, yeah,
DC
yeah,
did it too way
yeah,
back 30, 40, 50 years ago. That's kind of the motif I was shooting for visually with a lot of these.
yeah. So we talked about some of the rewards with the Kickstarter, with the prints, with the journal. What was it like for you as someone who's trying to gather these stories and say, like, what kind of made it? I don't want to say like just made the cut, but what made the cut for you? Like, what was it that you're like, this is what I want these stories to, really tell? We kind of talked about it a little bit, but how did you go through that process?
I I wanted to be guided by the entries, because
Okay.
the ultimate purpose of this is to elevate these stories and these voices by queer creators, and it's cross spectrums of, like I said, either gender or sexuality, because love has so many different permutations to it. I wanted to see where it would go, and that's actually a very good question, because I was expecting a lot of coming out stories, which is fine.
Yeah.
That's kind of where our cultural conversation permits queer people to exist, is this motif of the coming out story, and it's also necessary because it's also an anchor point for a lot of people's lives.
Right.
But I wanted to go beyond that. I was hoping a few people would break out of the box, and they did. I was actually overwhelmed by the amount of very insightful and wise and poignant stories about gender identity and
Mm.
the journey of that, almost to the point where I feel that if we were to do another book later down the line, I would devote almost that entirely to gender exploration,
Okay.
because we actually had to be very, unfortunately, decisive about where to place the cut, because there were so many and they were all good.
Yeah.
But that was a surprising element, which is just kind of, which is why your question's so good, is because we weren't expecting that. But as we got more, uh, there was clearly an aesthetic developing and a certain kind of motif developing, and it was all, we wanted it to be a cornucopia of options, but thematically it just sort of coalesced around these different, exactly what I wanted it to be, would be like different ideas of love, both in terms of what the good love can do,
Yep.
but also the potential harm that you get by taking those risks. And it just, we found our theme, and
Yeah.
I think they'll all come together really well.
That's that's so cool, because it is a process to try and figure out, like, what is going to fit with the thematic goal of your anthology, because it's a wide, like you said, it was a wide gamut that you were trying to hit, and you probably had to, like, this is good, but we've got a handful that are at this kind of theme, and we need to get some that are this theme, and
Yeah.
you had to really just probably pick and choose, and are banking that hopefully then that means you have some more that you can reach out and be like, we need to do a volume 2.
Yeah, well, it may not be love, but we do have
Yeah.
a volume 2 idea in mind.
Okay.
So we'll see where it goes. We actually may end up doing a publishing label. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
We want to, but we kind of, we'll play that by ear, because we are interested in seeing if anybody would be willing to carry us, depending on
Yeah.
how successful we are.
Yeah. And I know, because like we've talked about, you've written some stuff for anthologies. Do you have your own story in this
Yeah,
or this one? Okay.
I got browbeat into it actually by Michelle, my co-creator.
Oh,
She was like, Brent, you freaking, this is your freaking book. You got to put a story in there. And I'm like, oh God, okay, well. And I sat down, and I didn't want to steal from other people's. I wanted to make as much room for their voices as I could, much even to the sacrifice of my own. And she's like, no, no, no. If you're doing your own anthology, you got to have your own story in it. So I sat down and I thought about it, and it finally came to me.
yeah.
And I think it's actually, the in my mission statement, I asked for stories of yourself
Okay.
or loved ones. And it's not a literal translation. It can be allegory. It can be a
Yeah. Yeah.
direct relate. But so this is actually somebody in my family's story that
Oh,
I feel is necessary and worthy of preservation.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think this is what I love, that you use that terminology of preservation, because I think that's what this can do with what your goal of trying to do of tell your story, or tell a story of someone that you know, that's close to you, because stories need to be told, and they need to be heard, and they need to be preserved.
Yep. And
Because
just as one more thing too,
yeah,
it has to be majority LGBT on all the teams, and that includes
okay,
letterers and colorists. So if we did not provide, we matched artists and writers, but we did not match colorists and letterers. So the teams were responsible for their own colorists and lettering as needed. But if they did, it had to be majority LGBT plus for all the teams.
yeah.
So we are about 95% queer identifying. So if you support this book, you are directly elevating those voices.
Which is, I think, is really cool, because you have this idea of, hey, we want to give voice to creators and to people who are saying this is our story, or these are our stories. And I think that's appropriate, and I think that's really cool that you did that to elevate those voices.
Well, I mean, I wanted to basically create the venue
Yeah,
and then step back. I do have my own story in there, but really it was there. I really just wanted to bring other people along for the ride.
right.
And I think we have a little Discord server, and for all the teams and all the participants in the project, and it's a really creative, secure, happy place for people to be themselves and to let their hair down and to work honestly.
Yeah.
Even when you're trying to do your job, even when you're trying to work on art or write or share your thoughts, it's hard to do that in mixed spaces. And to have a place that's truly securely your own, it's very rare. And it was
Yeah.
a pleasure to create what we have. And
Yeah.
we're going to keep it after the project's over.
That's that's awesome to hear that. Um, we've talked a lot about the project. We've talked a lot about, bringing the process along. Um, if someone's listening to this interview, and they're like trying to think about, like, do I support this Kickstarter? Like, what would be your pitch to them of, like, this is why you should support it?
Well, I'm assuming that the nature of its mission or its title is provocative enough to want to get your
Right.
attention, which is an LGBTQIA plus love anthology. If that perks your interest, it's usually because of one or two reasons. You either are questioning, or you're identifying already as part of the community, or you're an ally that simply wants to understand more about how people think and feel in an endeavor to help contextualize and normalize uh, different ideas of love beyond the ones that you may have been culturally adapted or instructed to think of. And in any of those instances, that's the primary mandate of why it exists. If you are queer identifying, this book is designed to help you find some element of yourself within its pages, so you feel like you're a little less alone,
Mm,
as well as preserving stories that do have that kind of identifying element to it. If you are questioning, it helps give you the idea. You might be able to see something in these stories that makes you understand a little bit more about yourself and guides you towards one end of some spectrum or another to help on your journey. And then third, if you're an ally, or if you know somebody who is an ally and is confused but is vested in wanting to support and help you, but it needs to understand more, perhaps it's a parent, perhaps it's a guardian, perhaps it's a sibling, a loved one, or just a friend who just wants to know more about the nature of love within queer spaces,
yeah.
that's for them as well. And those are the three things I think I would hang my hat on for why I would support this.
Yeah, I think all three of those are valid spaces, and they allow people to resonate with it for whatever reason that they want to, connect. Like you said, you said it so eloquently, of, the purpose of this anthology. Uh, I know us, we can talk forever. And
Yeah.
we probably will the next couple days, about what we're picking up at our shops and things like that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you before we head out, though, is there any certain tier, though, that you are super excited about, that you say, like, this is one I was really happy that we were able to get this tier for the Kickstarter, that I think people should check out?
Yeah. Actually,
Or a
there's a
couple?
few.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it.
There's three. The primary one that'll always be available is called the super extra tier, and that has the stickers. And by the way, I didn't even mention the door hangers. You get free door hangers even as long as you get the physical book.
Okay.
It's in every tier that involves physical mail. It's done in the 1990s Trapper Keeper style, and it's a door hanger that basically says "Do not disturb." Pow! Like a big colors and explosion. It goes reading comics, and on the other side it says making comics. And it's just
That's
sort of
gonna hang on my door in my basement. The reading comics. It'll never be on the other side of making comics.
and we say it's your 90s throwback style to let mom and dad know that you're busy, kind of a thing. And that's just for every physical tier. But on top of, but the super extra tier at 60 is, I think, it's the stickers, 4 stickers, including a pronoun sticker, so you can slap it on something and use a Sharpie. And the 5 prints by all those artists, the big colorful Danak journal. I don't know if you're familiar with Danak, but they make journals and books. And it's top shelf quality.
Okay.
And the 3 tarot cards from Sarah Allen Reed that are bookmarks, jumbo size tarot cards that are serve as bookmarks. A thank you note, and I believe in the door hangers rather, and that's the super extra. There's only, I think, like 3 or 4 left, but there's another tier called, that's why I'm mentioning it secondly, it's called the Sugar Daddy tier. And it's the Sugar Daddy sorry. We kind of play into the meme a little bit. It has a high definition individually numbered print of the cover art by Elisa Romboli. And only 15 of these. Every single one will be printed by us. We're trying to do a glissé, kind of like inkjet, high resolution, high quality archival paper print. And we'll number them after we print them, seal them, and then store them in a way that it'll get to you safely. It's 145, not including shipping, but you get that print, big size print, along with the other prints, which are 5x7, by the way, the stickers, the bookmarks, the journal, the book, the door hangers, and the thank you card. And that's like, there's only like 5 of those left. And the last thing I would mention, we have script reviews. So if you are an aspiring comic writer, or you want to get into comics a little bit and you want to see, or you have a script in mind, you want to get some feedback, I'm doing 2-tier reviews at 150. I'll review your script. Justin Richards will review your script for about a 150. And at the 250 tier, I've actually scored Eric Palicki, Blacksmith.
Nice.
Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists. Nope. All We Ever Wanted, Maybe Someday, Deadbeats, anthologies. He will review your script up to 24 pages, and he'll send a curated comic bundle of some of his selected works to you as part of that tier as well.
That's awesome. And yeah, Eric, Atlantis Was Only Built for Tourists was such a great read. People who are watching this interview or listening to it, they know Justin Richards. He's been on the show multiple times. They've been on the show multiple times.
Yeah, Justin's a very good friend.
Yes. Mine, so. Well, what's so funny was I didn't even know Justin was involved with us, and then I saw it. I was Justin, what are you doing? I was like, I know. That's like such a good homie.
Yeah. And by the way, speaking of that, Eric Palicki he's from Toledo. I don't know if you knew that. And it turns out that our dads are friends. Living history, Civil War reenactment buddies going back 30 years or so.
That's so cool.
So we actually found each other unintentionally through comics, and it turns out that we have that connection as well.
That's awesome. Brent, I gotta have some time for you to just say, like, I hesitate to ask because you have this anthology. Is there anything else that you're working on that you can talk about, or things? Because I say this because I know you always are grinding.
I keep an eye on Dauntless Stories. It's a new label, very indie. Marcus Jimenez is the CEO, but he's also a talented artist in his own right. And we'll be collaborating on a few different projects. One of which is going to be with another artist from France, Sally Lockhart, or Lockhart Sally, on Twitter. I think it's inverted for the Twitter handle, but I got Sally's doing stuff too, by the way, that I can't tell you about. It's pretty exciting. But Sally and I have a story together we want to do through Dauntless. We created a character. And what else? Femme Fatale was going to be a short label anthology coming out eventually. I'm doing art with Marcus on that. And Producing the End of the World. It's an anthology out of Australia, and it's about the end of the world and various stories about the apocalypse, and it's about 53% right now, but it's only got a handful of days left, and I'm hoping that funds because I have a good story in there as well.
Brent, is there any last parting words that you want to say about this anthology before we wrap up the show?
Every little bit helps. If you think you don't have enough, that's fine. Just share it.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a digital version for $18. It's really, I'm not doing this really for me. I really want to get these stories out there. So if you have any questions, you can find me at Carol Collector on Twitter, short for Carol Danvers, of course. I am a Carol collector of many comics and art, and we can have a separate episode about that.
We probably should. I should probably just bring you on to explore your cave of Carol.
Oh yeah, there's stuff you can't even see right over there, and it's just a whole bunch of Carol issues and key issues and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Last question before we end the interview, Brent. Come Wednesday morning, who's going to spend more at the shop, you or me?
Man, it's a big week. Is it a big week?
I think so. I always feel like it's a big week right before Christmas, and then the week after. I haven't looked, I'll be honest. So
I haven't looked either. It's a crapshoot. I do know that it's not FOC for Marvel or DC this week, so that usually means it's a wad of something coming. And also, I'm deep into Devil's Reign.
Yep.
I'm deep into that because I'm really big into the X-Men, and there's an X-Men component to it too, and just Emma Frost with the Kingpin, and yeah, it's going to be a thick week possibly for me. We'll see.
So you're going
Oh yeah, I'm going all in possibly. Yeah.
Oh, gang, I'm telling you what, our Wednesdays at our shop are so much fun. I wish I could
blast.
I wish I could bring you all there. Maybe I will someday in a video. I'll take you there. I'll just make sure. I will make sure though, if I do a video, it's a day that you get a slab book.
Okay, yeah. You got to tell them about. Okay, I'm going to full disclosure. I submitted a lot of stuff to CGC over the summer while the cons were canceled. I figure this is a great time to capture a bunch of artists while they're, getting the home fires are burning. They have to get their books and signs to get some, get their scratch. They're doing it at CGC, and I'm like, let's do this. I want to support these guys. So I had oh my God, just an ungodly amount of books submitted for different artists and writers, and there's been a few times where they came back 9.8 and they did something special with it, and I just lost my mind. I think that the pinnacle, of course, the one that you love the most, is when I collapsed on the floor and nearly scared a small child. But
you collapsed on the floor in the fetal position, cradling your slab book, and these two kids who had no idea what comics were basically walked in and just saw you. And I was dying.
It was worth it. It was worth every minute. I think it was it was Art Adams one. It was no, it was Adam Kubert. Is the Adam Kubert
okay,
one?
Yeah,
came back 9.8, and I was like, because it's hard to get your hands on that one. And it was a Captain Marvel, 1 in 25, Adam Kubert, and it was I mean, I was a little happy about it.
That you were. Oh man. Well, Brent, thank you so much for just taking some time. This has been a blast. We always have fun talking, but it was so cool to just get to do it in a professional setting, more or less, for our side hobbies that we love.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. And you can have me back more often. I mean, we got to do it in person at the shop if you want.
Yes, we will. We'll set something up more, and we'll be doing more of these for sure.
So. Yeah, and I'll give you a tour of the Carol Den, because you have no idea what I'm looking at right now. It's crazy.
No, we don't. Gang, all the links that were mentioned for the Kickstarter, for Brent's social media, are in the description of this video. Go support this Kickstarter. Even though they're crushing it, continue to support this Kickstarter. Every little bit helps, even way past the goal. Go support it. Follow Brent on social media. Stay up to date with what they're doing and what they're creating. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.